We begin with a source tonight who served in the Trump administration alongside Bill Barr. Alyssa Farah Griffin was the White House communications director and is now a CNN political commentator. And I just wonder what you made of what Bill Barr had to say.
I could spend the whole hour unpacking that historic, stunning, and bizarre interview with the former attorney general. I want to say one thing. He made this point that, in fact, the left and Joe Biden are more dangerous than the right because autocracies don't emerge from the right. I would point to Viktor Orban, who Donald Trump regularly praises. Bolsonaro in Brazil also came from the right. It's an absurd, historically inaccurate claim that he's making. But I don't know Bill Barr well. I served alongside him. I was in high-level meetings with him in the West Wing. He matter-of-factly admitted to you that Donald Trump talked regularly about executing people. I knew of the one instance I personally witnessed. I had heard of other examples secondhand, but he seemed to dismiss it and then goes into this line of like, oh, don't take him literally. Well, we didn't take him literally when he wanted to steal the election or when he incited a mob to go to the Capitol and it turned violent. It's time that people start taking Donald Trump much more literally at his word. And I would just also add this. Donald Trump has done a masterful job, and with, I would say, his friends in the right-wing media, of painting America as being in this hellscape right now. We can't survive another 4 years of Joe Biden. We've survived 9/11, World War II, economic downturns. I don't like Joe Biden's policies. That is demonstrably untrue. Whether it's the border, crime is down. Republicans were blocking a border bill right now. We can survive bad policies. You cannot necessarily, as a democracy, survive an anti-constitutional president again like Donald Trump.
I mean, when he brought up gas stove regulations and truly was legitimately saying that is as dangerous as what he personally witnessed and spoke out against and angered Trump when he spoke to the Associated Press in December and said, there was no widespread voter fraud here in the U.S.
Honestly, the interview felt like a hostage video. I noticed that he was not regularly making eye contact with you, especially when he was making some of the more bizarre claims like gas stoves. It felt like he was kind of clinging to some right-wing talking points that nobody is turning out this election because of, electric vehicles or gas stoves, rather than talking about issues that he knows are fundamental. Donald Trump was going to fire him as attorney general had he not stepped down. He wanted a loyalist in that role who was going to lie about the election and was going to help him try to carry out overturning it. Bill Barr knows that. I mean, it's frankly disgraceful that he's doing this about face now.
What you just mentioned there, you posted this last week and said that on an occasion where Bill Barr was present, you heard Donald Trump talk about suggesting executing a leaker from the White House. I brought that up with Barr, and this is what he said. But Alyssa Farah Griffin, who was Trump's communications director, posted yesterday and said that you were present at a moment when Trump suggested executing the person who leaked information that he went to the White House bunker when those George Floyd protests were happening outside the White House. Do you remember that?
I remember him being very mad about that. I actually don't remember him saying executing, but I wouldn't dispute it. I mean, it doesn't sound. The president would lose his temper and say things like that. I doubt he would have actually carried it out.
But he would say that on other occasions. You said
the president. The president had I think people sometimes took him too literally, and he would say things like similar to that in occasions to blow off steam. But I wouldn't take him literally every time he did it.
Why not?
Because at the end of the day, it wouldn't be carried out and you could talk sense into it.
But just because it's not carried out and you could talk sense into him, doesn't that still mean that the threat is there?
No, I mean, I think, I don't think the threat is there. The thing that I worry about President Trump is not that he's going to become an autocrat and do those kinds of things.
Why not?
Because I don't think he would.
But
at the end of the day.
What's the basis for that understanding that you have?
Well,
or is it just your own hunch?
That's my feeling, having worked for him and seen him in action. I don't think he would actually go and kill political rivals and things like that.
I mean, are people that desensitized in the Trump administration that he was like, oh, it's just blowing off steam?
I mean, maybe in the moment, but with the hindsight of history, I mean, in the moment, by the way, he was sitting to the left of the Resolute desk, Bill Barr was, and the conversation was about invoking the Insurrection Act to try to quell domestic protests. Bill Barr, having been Attorney General during Rodney King, was talking the former president out of it. And he then launched into a tirade saying we needed to execute somebody who leaked this. It's treason. I don't know how he couldn't remember that moment. I think that that's lawyer speak for I don't want to answer it. But that's even more shocking if it was something that he didn't even see as significant and didn't file away for the history books.
I remember that day because that was when Trump was upset that someone had leaked that's why Trump did that walk across the White House grounds where they cleared the protesters. Correct. He held the Bible upside down. I remember all of that. I mean, we were told by sources, I think Kevin Liptak reported, Trump did that because he was embarrassed that it had been reported he went to the bunker.
Very much so. And there were at least a dozen other people in that meeting who witnessed that same statement by the former president.
Alyssa Farah-Griffin, thank you for your perspective on that. Also here tonight, as we are talking about this, Bill Barr, at one point in that interview, said that the Biden administration, he believes, is a real threat to democracy. My next source is a Republican who might disagree with that. Adam Kinzinger investigated the threat to democracy around January 6th as a member of the House Select Committee and is now also a CNN senior political commentator. Congressman, I want you to listen to how Barr tried to equate the threat that was posed by that period of leading up to January 6th with the policies that are being implemented by President Biden. How can you equate, the border is a real issue. I've been to the border. No one's denying that. But is that the same thing as what you said recently, which was that, you know, the conduct that was involved with Donald Trump, you said trying to subvert and prevent the progress, the execution of probably the most important process we have, which is the peaceful transfer of power after an election. Name one thing that Biden has done that's worse than that.
I think his whole administration is a disaster for the country.
Is worse than subverting the peaceful transfer of power?
Did he succeed?
Only because Vice President Mike Pence stood in the way, and now the people who are lining up to be VP again say that they will not do what Mike Pence did.
I mean, look, I was very loud in saying I thought it was the whole episode was shameful, and I'm very troubled by it, and that's why it's not an easy decision. But I think when you have a Hobson's choice, you have to pick the lesser of two evils.
You don't see this as the definition of putting party over country?
No. No, not because unfortunately we're in a situation where the policy differences between the two parties are very, very vast. There's a huge gulf, and so in that
you're saying Trump can't achieve the policies.
I think he's going to have a much harder time achieving them.
But you're voting for so just to be clear, you're voting for someone who you believe tried to subvert the peaceful transfer of power, that can't even achieve his own policies, that lied about the election even after his attorney general told him that the election wasn't stolen. And as the former chief law enforcement in this country, you're going to vote for someone who is facing 88 criminal counts. Well,
look, the 88 criminal counts, a lot of those are, and I've said...
Even if 10 of them are accurate?
The answer to the question is yes. I'm supporting the Republican ticket.
Congressman?
I mean, the only person happy about that interview was probably Chris Sununu because he actually looked worse than him, you know, because Sununu was doing the same thing. I cannot, when you ask him, isn't that the definition of putting party over country? It absolutely is the definition of putting party over country. Not because, you know, he could have come back and said, well, look, you know, if I was going to vote on the economy, like, I agree with Republican economics more than Democratic economics. But he was talking about who is a bigger threat to democracy. To democracy. Look, you can have an out-of-control border. An out-of-control border does not threaten the peaceful transfer of power, because what we saw on January 6th, and what we saw, frankly, in the intervening period before that, including when the person that succeeded Mr. Bill Barr was told by the president at the time, just say the election was corrupt. Just say it was corrupt. You don't prove it, just say it, and then leave the rest to me and the Republican congressman, implying that he will put enough doubt in people's mind to overthrow it. This is the definition of a threat to democracy. And Bill Barr, to go through his litany of things, you know, stoves, they're trying to get rid of cars, which is the most insane thing I've ever heard. Nobody's trying to get rid of cars, but he is trying to convince himself, and you can see it in real time, because he's struggling there.
He didn't want Donald Trump to be the Republican nominee. I mean, he made that pretty clear when we spoke to him 8 months ago on this show. He was scathing, downright scathing in his criticism of Donald Trump. I mean, without asking you to kind of, I mean, only Bill Barr can explain his position on this, but what do you think is behind the change?
It's easy to just go with the Republican nominee. I mean, trust me, as somebody that's kind of been kicked out of a tribe, if you want to try to stay in your tribe and your whole identity is based on the fact that you're a Republican or he's a former Republican and that's how he's going to go make money now and that's how everybody knows him, it's much easier just to say, I'm just going to default to supporting the Republican nominee because they're both bad people. It is hard to turn around and say, I'm going to vote Democratic, even if I don't agree with the policies because of the threat. And that's what you're watching in real time, him wrestling with that. And he made the wrong decision. And he's, frankly, ought to be embarrassed for that interview. It was a great interview you did, but he ought to be embarrassed for his answers.
He certainly was not. He stood by them. Adam Kinzinger, thank you for your perspective on this tonight.